Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for attending today.
Hi.
Great. Okay, so we'll get started and we'll continue to admit people as they join us in the waiting room. So this session today is being recorded so that those who are unable to make it are able to watch the recording later. So if you don't want to be recorded, in the bottom left, you can stop your video. And please share in the chat any questions or comments that you have throughout our hour today. We want to be as really engaging as possible. So my name is Ashley Richard, and I'm joining you all today from Treaty 1 territory, which is the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Red River Métis. I've been living and working in Winnipeg, Manitoba for almost 11 years now. And Winnipeg, Manitoba is the home of WEKH, which is the National Indigenous Hub for the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. So the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub is all about building an inclusive innovation ecosystem for women entrepreneurs across the country. And WEKH is ensuring that Indigenous women are included in the future of an inclusive innovation ecosystem. We received the name WEKH in ceremony in 2020 by Elder Margaret Lavallee of Saugeen First Nation. And as she explained it to us, WEKH means ice bear woman. And the ice bear is the spirit of resiliency and strength. And that's a spirit that can be found within and alongside Indigenous women on their entrepreneurial journeys. So we hosted our first event of the year today to bring you some findings from an Indigenous mini report that we put together last year on resources for Indigenous women entrepreneurs, an analysis of the current supports available in the ecosystem, as well as to bring in some of our partners at WEKH Indigenous and just share with you some upcoming and exciting announcements for 2022. So today I'll start by giving a brief overview of the mini report. And if you have any questions throughout my presentation, please put them in the chat. And my colleague, Kara Thorvaldson, will be moderating the chat, and we'll have time for a brief Q&A after. And then we'll get into our 2022 WEKH announcements. That will include announcements from myself, my colleague, Kara Thorvaldson, and then we're also joined by Marissa Hill from the Indigenous Innovation Initiative, Vanessa L'Esperance from the Indigenous Lift Collective, and Shannon Peston from the Finance Cafe. So this report is an analysis that is, analyzing the current resources that are available to support Indigenous women entrepreneurs across the country, and also takes time to highlight some of the initiatives and programs that are trailblazing in this space. If you'd like full access to the full ecosystem mapping, you can access that at www.wekh.ca, and it's under the Resources tab. So the analysis include looking at 4 components. So we looked at organizations and support programs for Indigenous entrepreneurs, entrepreneurship toolkits for Indigenous entrepreneurs, grants and prizes, and lastly, awards for Indigenous entrepreneurs. So for the first piece, organizations and programs, we looked at 136 different organizations across Canada that are supporting or influencing Indigenous entrepreneurship. So data showed that while there's a number and a growing number of supports for Indigenous entrepreneurs, there's still significant room for growth for those programs that have a gendered lens. As an example, 35 out of the 136 organizations. Oh, I just lost my screen. I'm back. Only 3 of the grant opportunities had a gendered lens. And you can see here in the table that trend followed through for the different categories of training, grants, financing, mentorship, networking, and tools and resources. So in our suggestions, we've put forth that more of these programs should be offering a gendered lens, because some of the resources that are available specifically for only Indigenous entrepreneurs might be lacking, targeting some of those specific intersectional barriers that Indigenous women might face in entrepreneurship. Our Trailblazer Spotlight is the Indigenous Innovation Initiative, who you'll be hearing from later today. They're one of our partners. So I3 is a platform with the goal to enable Indigenous innovators and communities to identify and solve their own challenges, transform lives, and drive inclusive growth and health outcomes. So you'll hear later from Marissa Hill about an exciting announcement that I3 and WEKH have, and you can find out more about I3 at their website, indigenousinnovate.org. Our second piece was looking at toolkits. So we were able to look at 7 toolkits for Indigenous entrepreneurs. And similar to the programs and organizations, only 2 out of 7 were written with a gendered lens. Areas for attention and greater consideration that we think future toolkits could focus on is financial literacy, including the trauma of money and Indigenous women's relationship to money, providing information on mentorship and networking opportunities, specifically advice on how and where to access these networks for Indigenous women. As a result of this analysis, we did hold an event in December of 2021 where we invited SheEO, the Indigenous Lift Collective, and NATOA to share about the mentorship and networking opportunities that they've been creating for a number of years for Indigenous women specifically. And third, legal frameworks and considerations that affect Indigenous women entrepreneurs, especially those considerations when Indigenous women are either running sole proprietorships or maybe operating a business on reserve. We also found that a lot of the toolkits provided links to external resources, and perhaps there is opportunities for collaboration to include more tangible tools in the toolkits that are online. Grants and prizes. So we looked at 37 different grants and prizes for Indigenous entrepreneurs, ranging from $500 to $100,000. 3 out of 37 of them had a gendered lens. And I think that grants and prizes can be a really unique and positive way to support Indigenous women, especially in starting their business. Not every small business needs a huge amount of capital to get started. So one of our recommendations, if you were at our 2021 report launch, was creating more opportunities for micro grants for Indigenous women entrepreneurs. As well, a similar finding from the National Aboriginal Capital Corporations identified grants as one of the top supports that could help and would help Indigenous women entrepreneurs. Our last category that we looked at was awards. So awards they provide a very special opportunity for Indigenous women entrepreneurs to showcase their talents and businesses to new audiences. And it's really important that they're given this space, one, not only to celebrate and just recognize the special contributions that they're giving to their communities and the economy as a whole, but really it provides, it's linked to another topic. It provides access to new networks, maybe new mentorship opportunities. So we looked at 29 awards across Canada that were for Indigenous entrepreneurs, and 4 out of 20 were for Indigenous women. So our Trailblazer Spotlight for this category was on the Alberta Women Entrepreneurs, and Bobby Reset is the CEO of Virtual Gurus. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Bobby and her work, and she was one of the 2021 recipients. So some of the recommendations within the report are creating more low barrier opportunities for Indigenous women to network and engage with one another. A really fabulous example of networking for Indigenous women that's low barrier is the Indigenous Lift Collective, who you'll hear from shortly. Within entrepreneurship toolkits, creating workbooks and tangible worksheets, engaging resources and activities in lieu of a list of providing links to external resources. Again, creating more micro grants and non-repayable grants as sources of funding for Indigenous women, and then conducting further research into the positive impacts that grants and prizes do to support the growth and success of Indigenous women-owned entrepreneurs, as well as, providing more grants and prizes. So Miigwech will provide a link to the report in the chat function, and we'll now take any questions that have come up.
Thanks so much, Ashley. Now, I don't think there were many questions in the chat so far, but I did see one that I will raise. And Shirley asked, she said, it appears that most of the organizations are nonprofit. Can you speak to that, Ashley, or do you have any stats behind the report on that?
So we didn't look into the data between for-profit and not-for-profits, but I think just speaking from the experience I have in, working with different support organizations, a lot of them are not-for-profit. But what I have noticed, and one of our speakers will talk about this later, is there has been growth in the area of financial literacy and Indigenous women starting their own for-profit businesses in order to support other Indigenous women on their financial literacy journeys.
Wonderful, thank you. And we actually have another question in the chat from Lindsay. Lindsay asks, what role do you see formal education institutions playing in this space?
Oh, awesome. From Red River College. Hi, Lindsay. Yeah, definitely education institutions play a huge role in this space. I think that there's room for, and I've been on a tour of the entrepreneurship spaces at Red River College, and I'm just blown away by the maker spaces, the incubator spaces, the accelerators. And I think if institutions have room in their business schools or any of the faculties to create space for Indigenous women entrepreneurs to take part in special programming, I think that's definitely a path forward. And I know we're going to hear from Shannon Peston later more about the Finance Cafe, but I think she also has something that she could talk about in relation to post-secondary institutions and their role in supporting Indigenous women's entrepreneurship. So Shannon, I won't throw you under the bus, but maybe
not
you
at
can mention your
all.
special project.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm so happy because post-secondaries play a huge role. And I think when I think about the post-secondary system, I look at WEKH, for example, and the network of networks that it has with the post-secondaries across the country, I think is a first really great starting place because a lot of the research can be coming out of these post-secondaries. But I also think we have to think about entrepreneurship as a pathway to economic empowerment for women. So you don't have to come out of a traditional business program to go into entrepreneurship. So helping, Indigenous women who are in the post-secondary programs to encourage, whether you're in social work or kinesiology or business, that entrepreneurship can become a pathway. And I think, one of the things that we've seen at Mount Royal University is this notion of creating bursaries to encourage more Indigenous women to pursue entrepreneurship and making these community funded type of bursaries. So people like you or I can create them and we can engage the larger community to donate to them and help more Indigenous women get exposure to entrepreneurship before they actually go in and try becoming, entrepreneurs. So it's helping. We've got to start a little bit sooner in the process. And arguably, I would say, even before the post-secondaries, we really have to start thinking about entrepreneurship as an economic pathway for meeting the unique needs and circumstances of Indigenous women.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Shannon. And one of the important and unique things about the work that we do at WEKH is, Similarly to how I feel absolutely every single person in this country has a role to play in reconciliation, I also think there's a diverse amount of organizations and sectors that do have a role in supporting diverse Indigenous entrepreneurship. So we're working with financial institutions, not-for-profit, post-secondary institutions, the media, the government. Like everybody has a role to play. And throwing back to the report I mentioned earlier, our report from last year, we put forth just over 30 recommendations for these different types of organizations and recommendations that they can influence in their workplace to be more inclusive.
Awesome. And I think we do have one more question. Sorry, this one's from Laura. So there seems to be a lot of grants that are industry specific, which can be a barrier for many entrepreneurs trying to start a business in new and niche spaces. Do you think there will be a need to create more generalized grants to help more Indigenous women into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think there is a need for just more grants in general. And there needs to be a mechanism to generate awareness on how Indigenous women and Indigenous community can access these grants. So whether it's, centralizing this information on the WEKH website, or I think provincially also, there's a lot of organizations who capture a lot of this information on their websites. But I think in general, there are not enough grants and micro grants for Indigenous women entrepreneurs. So as a whole, tons of room for growth, definitely.
Hey, Ashley, maybe can I jump in on that too and just talk about some of the work that NACA is doing? I know we've got a lot of pitch competitions in the Indigenous women's entrepreneurship space, but I think one of the great things that Magnolia and her team over at NACA are doing is looking at these combinations of loans with a grant portion of them. So to Laura, your point, there's a lot of industry specific barriers, and NACA is looking at this microloan program that will be distributed throughout the Aboriginal financial, what we call the AFI network across the country. Some great work is going to be coming out of there. So I would say stay tuned for that. And also recognizing that with a lot of these, we're starting to see grant portions, which means there's a portion of a loan that is non-repayable. So I think there's some interesting models that we're going to start seeing in the future, but great to have that question come up because it takes the full audience of participants on these types of calls to start lobbying and advocating for this type of opportunity, because you're right, we see a lot of small micro businesses that often don't have the same economic value from a lending perspective. So, and we know that women tend to go or are overrepresented in industries that traditional mainstream institutions aren't always the first priority. But also I will say that the financial institutions are making some great headway there as well. So I think things are changing. It's slow, but I just wanted to call out the grant portion and really recognizing some of the fantastic work that we're starting to see, particularly out of NACA.
Mm-hmm. And Magnolia and Kimberly from NACA are here. So if anyone has any questions for NACA specifically, pop it into the chat. I'm sure they'd be happy to engage.
And I'm wondering if we have time for one more question, Ashley, or do we need to move on to the next portion?
Yep, we can fit one more.
Okay, and Shannon, I might keep you spotlighted as well, because I think you might have a few points to make on this question as well. But the question is, do you think that financial literacy is paramount, especially for Indigenous women entrepreneurs?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it's it's an important question on a lot of different levels. And I'll say the first thing being that we know so much more that there is a very complex relationship between, first of all, gender and money. So I know we'll have an opportunity to talk about the Finance Cafe a little bit, but maybe I'll just forget that part of the agenda and just kind of bring it in here, because that's one of the things that we're trying to tackle. So not only do Indigenous women face gendered concerns around money, we also have the additional intersectionality barriers of being able to reach our full economic potential. So I would say that financial literacy, most of us, even, you know, I'm a former banker, but there's so many things around financial management of a company that I'm not the greatest at. And I think some accountants would say the same things. You know, we've got accountants that say they don't know how to budget, you know, for their own company. So financial literacy too, I think we also have to broaden the definition of financial literacy, because it's not just about the numbers. And I think we scare off a lot of people when we start talking about the math, because a lot of us would say, oh, I'm not a math person, and so I'm going to stay away from it. But when we think about financial literacy on a more holistic level, it's the trauma around money, it's our thoughts, it's our feelings, it's our attitudes, it's the experiences, the lived experiences that we've had around money that ultimately are going to shape how we make decisions in our companies, how we show up for ourselves, the value that we put on ourselves, particularly in service industry. So financial literacy, we have to broaden the conversation, because while there is the technical, I mean, the numbers are the numbers. You can't indigenize how to read a balance sheet or, you know, put that sort of a lens on it, but you can, you know, you can put a gender perspective on it to say, well, you know, more women, we already deal with financial barriers in our day-to-day lives. So here's how this is going to show up in a business. So I think financial literacy, but it is taking that gendered lens and it's breaking the mold of how financial education is delivered currently. And I think that's one of the things that we're really excited about at the Finance Cafe, because it is built, first of all, we are a majority Indigenous women-owned company, but we do come at it from a built by women entrepreneurs for women entrepreneurs, and are really strong collaborators with our ecosystem. And I'll, you know, give, for example, some of our ecosystem partners like WeStem out of Alberta, was a partner that believed in the financial literacy and offered it to their cohort of women entrepreneurs. So, you know, there's a great opportunity, I think, for private companies, social enterprises, not-for-profits to all kind of come together and say, okay, how do we look at this a little bit differently? And again, recognizing the unique circumstances that Indigenous women face.
Awesome. Yes, thank you so much, Shannon. And I saw that we have Kate Morris here with us today. And you can find more about Scout Financial Solutions at moneyscout.ca. I have attended one of Kate's workshops. It was amazing. So yeah, in general, I do find in our communication and consultation with Indigenous women entrepreneurs or diverse Indigenous entrepreneurs, the topic of not even financial literacy, just finances in general, is often the first topic to come up, especially if we're talking with, you know, the lens of barriers and challenges. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you everybody for all of your questions. We're going to move into the next piece of our agenda, which is some upcoming and exciting announcements for 2022. If you do have any more questions about the report, please feel free to email me. But we wanted to put these numbers together so that you can use it to advocate for creating more of these services within your work or your organization. So announcement number one is as of October 2021, the U of M Asper School of Business is officially now the National Indigenous Hub for the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. So I'm located in Winnipeg and I work with the University of Manitoba very closely. And my colleague Kara Thorvaldson is actually located in Calgary, but we're more so working remotely and ensuring that we are working nationally with the different partners across the country. So we're very excited about that, to establish a real presence here in the heart of North America. Announcement number two. So we work very closely with a group of 11 organizations across Canada who are influencing Indigenous women's entrepreneurship. And we have come together and collectively written a statement that's going to guide our work into the year 2030. So some of our partners are here today, like the Indigenous Lift Collective, Grand Challenges Canada, I3, NACA is also in the partnership group. So I'm not going to read the entire statement here today, but I do welcome you to check out the most recent issue of Say magazine, because we co-authored a piece in the most recent issue, and and our full collective statement and a list of all the organizations who are involved in the partnership are within that article. And if you're not familiar with Say Magazine, I just want to also thank Tara McPhail from Say Magazine, who really collaborated with us on this and made it possible. They are an Indigenous-owned publication. Last update from me, please check out the See It, Be It campaign on the WEKH website. So the See It, Be It campaign features women entrepreneurs who are just trailblazing in entrepreneurship. And it's, in order to just create more platforms for women entrepreneurs to be showcased and bust down stereotypes. Early on, when WEKH started, they put out a report, and one of the pieces showed a screenshot of what comes up on Google when you Google, I think it was the word entrepreneur or something to that effect. And it was all predominantly white men, maybe some white women. So the purpose of this campaign is to showcase more diverse women entrepreneurs. So in 2021, we had added 250 Indigenous women entrepreneurs to that list. And in the fall of 2021, we added 350 new Indigenous women to the list. So we're going to be working on putting all the data together behind the scenes on that, and we'll have all of those Indigenous women on the website live at some point in 2022. So we're really excited about that. That's it from me. I'm going to pass the mic over to my colleague, Kara Thorbolton, who's going to talk about her coffee series.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much, Ashley. So excited to be here and so excited to be starting out 2022 with such an amazing report. I popped the link in the chat for everyone if you want to check it out, share it among your networks. We're extremely excited about it. But today I'm going to be talking about our Indigenous Coffee Break series. So this is a new series for us, or a revamp on a previous series we've done. So going forward in 2022, what we're going to be doing is collaborating with ecosystem organizations all across Canada and Turtle Island to connect Indigenous women entrepreneurs in our network directly with those ecosystem support organizations. So I'm going to pop a link in the chat, but our first one is going to be happening next Tuesday on January 25th. I'm so excited to announce it's with our newest partner, the Indigenous Screen Office, and we're also collaborating with OCAD's Center for Emerging Artists and Designers. So I'm going to pop that link in the chat right now. This is a great opportunity if you work in, there we go. This is a great opportunity if you work in the media or visual arts, or if you're interested in getting involved and learning more about it. These sessions are very casual, they're very flexible. Definitely just jump in if you have a question or if you just want to learn. And also it's a great opportunity to connect with other Indigenous women entrepreneurs in the network. So highly recommend that you come to those. And if you are an ecosystem support organization here today, I would love to connect with you and learn about what you have coming up for 2022 and seeing if we can collaborate on an upcoming session this year. Yeah, that's all from me. I will pop my email in the chat, but definitely looking to make those connections between your organizations and the Indigenous women in our networks. So please reach out. Thanks, Ashley.
Awesome. Thank you, Kara. Next, we're going to hear an announcement from our partner, Vanessa Lesbrands, who's joining us today. Vanessa works with the Indigenous Lift Collective, and I work most closely with Vanessa through the Lift Circle, which she is the lead of. So the Lift Circle is for Indigenous women entrepreneurs. They meet via Zoom on the first Sunday of every month and weekly on Wednesdays. Welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you, Ashley, for that introduction. Tanche, everyone. So happy to be here. Before I get started, Ashley, love your earrings. Part of the reason why I love coming to these events is just seeing like all the earrings on display. I'm like, ooh, I like those. Oh, I need to buy those. A little about me. I am a mixed heritage woman, a European settler on my dad's side, and a proud Métis woman on my mom's side. and I am joining all of you today from the traditional, unceded, and ancestral territory of WEKH First Nation, also known as New Westminster. As Ashley mentioned, I'm here representing the Indigenous LIFT Collective, specifically the LIFT Circle, and we exist to co-create the conditions for Indigenous women entrepreneurs to thrive. We are a supportive and uplifting community of Indigenous women entrepreneurs and non-binary folks from across Turtle Island. If this sounds like your jam, please feel free to know that you are welcome to join us in Circle, as Ashley mentioned, weeklies on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Pacific and 11 a.m. Pacific on Sundays, on the first Sunday of every month. I'll drop my email in the chat, unless Kara already has, because I know she's on top of that kind of stuff. So I'm here to talk about two initiatives that LIFT has partnered with WEKH on some initiatives coming up that we're so excited about. Before I do, I'm going to do a little bit of a detour. Laura, you had mentioned in the Zoom chat about grants and how grants are like industry specific, which is there's so many barriers, right, to accessing funds and capital, especially for Indigenous women entrepreneurs. And that's why at the LIFT Circle, we're hoping to be able to launch the Three Sisters Garden Fund. So actually, thanks to WEKH, they put on an event yesterday giving information about a grant that's coming up from the federal government to support women entrepreneurs, especially underrepresented and underserved entrepreneurs. And so if we're successful in that, our vision is to launch the Three Sisters Garden Fund, where we would have a cohort of Indigenous women entrepreneurs in all stages of their business. And we would basically offer them a menu of professional service providers, ideally Indigenous women service providers, and if not, then other women. And it'd be like, here, you have X amount, what do you need for your business to be in service of your business? So maybe it's a business lawyer, maybe it's an accountant, maybe it's a web designer. So then you custom create, you curate what you need for your business, because so many applications for funding dictate and stipulate, well, you have to spend it like this, you have to spend it like that. That's crazy. So we just really want to decolonize the process and really just be in service of Indigenous women entrepreneurs. So that's in the works. We're keeping our fingers crossed on that, because we hear there's so many barriers and headaches. So we want to remove all that and just make it easy to run the business the way you need to. So fingers crossed that we're able to launch that. But two things we are working on along with WEKH is our circles of matriarchy. Has anyone here attended a circles of matriarchy rematriating mentorship? Throw up a hand or thumbs up, an emoji if you have. We've hosted 3 different events, and 2 of which have sold out. And it's just, and actually, speaking of Kate Morris, she's here today. She was actually one of our mentors too on financial literacy. Kate is awesome, so shout out to Kate. And so we've curated 3 different circles of matriarchy just to amplify and celebrate Indigenous women wisdom and to be in service of Indigenous women entrepreneurs. So they're all entrepreneurial focused, and all Indigenous women and non-binary folks are welcome to join. And the whole premise is to celebrate and acknowledge the wisdom present and to really decolonize mentorship. Because I don't know about all of you, but I think for so many, mentorship has taken on this very colonial Western viewpoint where it's like very top down. Like, I'm the mentor, I have all the knowledge, and you're the mentee, and so you need to receive my knowledge. And there's no reciprocity or two-way learning. So we wanted to structure these circles to really celebrate not only the wisdom contained by the mentors, but all the women in the circles. So if this sounds interesting to you, to learn from a mentor and also learn from one another in small circles and breakout rooms, please join one of our upcoming sessions. We don't have anything scheduled at the moment, but we will be putting on more of those events this year. And we have something exciting in store. We do plan to launch a podcast. So we'll be inviting all the mentors we've had in the circles to join us for podcast episodes to talk about areas that they are really knowledgeable in and that they're passionate about. And that way it allows this wisdom and knowledge to ripple and to be amplified throughout Turtle Island. And along with that, we'll be developing a resource center, an online resource center. So for all these incredible mentors to be able to share their knowledge with tools, to build a toolkit essentially to help you in your business. So we're really excited to be launching that. So keep your eyes out for that coming up. And then secondly, something I'm super pumped for, on Monday, we're going to be having our first work party to co-create a Wikipedia page on decolonizing business. I'm so pumped for this. I'm amped because we're going to be bringing together 10 Indigenous women from across Turtle Island to co-create this page to inform and educate the world. Millions, if not billions of people will have an opportunity to be able to come to this page and learn and understand, what does decolonizing business look like? What does it mean? Why do it? How do it? And then amplify Indigenous thought leaders, scholars, authors, and knowledge keepers. And so we'll be drawing on their wisdom and their knowledge and referring to their books, articles, and whatnot. So that's going to be starting on Monday. And I'm so excited to be working with WEKH on that. And on that note, I would love to hear from everyone here because I know there's so much wisdom in this circle we have right now. Just in a few short words, and Ashley, I think it would be really cool to bring this forward on Monday and Kara during the work party. But for everyone here, I would love just in a few short words, what does decolonizing business mean to you? So what does decolonizing business mean, or what does it look like to you? So if you want to share that in the chat, I would love to hear what everyone thinks. So my ask is, what does decolonizing business look like, or what does it mean to you? So if you want to just share your thoughts, maybe a few words, maybe a sentence in the Zoom chat, I would love to see it. And then that we can talk about that and be mindful of that when we're co-creating this page that will be on Wikipedia. So anyways, that's a little bit about me. I'm sure I've allocated all my time, so I won't be a greedy granny. And for the decolonizing Wikipedia page, I just want to acknowledge Van City. They were our sponsor for that, and we wouldn't be able to put on this event to decolonize business on Wikipedia without Van City. So so just acknowledgement to them. And thank you everyone for joining. And I see thoughts coming in on decolonizing business. So I'm excited to read that. So thank you everyone. And I'm sharing my email in the Zoom chat again, in case anyone has any questions about our Lift Circle. Marcy?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vanessa. Yes, we have such exciting things upcoming in the new year. So next, we're going to hear from Marissa, who's joining us from the Indigenous Innovation Initiative. And Marissa is the Indigenous Innovation Lab Manager. They are co-creating a first of its kind pre-seed through scale innovation lab in partnership with community, partners, and innovators. Marissa is committed to engaging in these activities through co-creation and using Indigenous methodologies that center First Nation, Inuit, and Métis worldviews, values, principles, and protocols.
Thanks, Ashley. Ani Bujo, Marissa Indigenous, Midland Indunjba, Tukurando Ninda. Hi everyone, my name is Marissa Hill and I come from what is now called Midland and I live in what is now called Toronto. My pronouns are she and her. And I'm a citizen of the Métis Nation of Ontario. I come from the historic Georgia Bay Métis community in what is now called Midland, which is on the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and the Georgian Bay Métis peoples. These lands are also part of Pre-Confederation Treaty 5 and 16 territory. I've been a visitor and guest here in Toronto for the last 11 years. Toronto is on Dish with One Spoon Treaty territory, the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee. And I remain eternally grateful for the gifts and opportunities these lands provide to me, including coming into relationship with all the incredible people here today. So WEKH. So I have a fun announcement. I just want to share for folks who aren't familiar a little bit about the Indigenous Innovation Initiative, which I will call I3 for short. It's a little bit of a mouthful. So I3 is a culturally rooted and Indigenous-led platform in Canada that invests in innovation that is led by and that is directly supporting First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people. We're an impact-first investor, so we support, as Ashley mentioned earlier, those who are really close to the most pressing challenges and help them develop, test, and iterate innovative solutions to those challenges. There's an About Us document in the chat that I just put the link for, and it outlines our impact-first investment model in a bit more detail, but our work really centers on reducing and removing the racialized, gendered, and systemic barriers that innovators experience when accessing capital and wraparound supports, including skill building, networks and relationships, obviously financial, social capital, and celebrating and amplifying impact along their innovative journeys. In May of 2021, we announced the first cohort of projects being funded through I3 through the Indigenous Gender Equality Program. Each innovator is receiving a $250,000 grant to develop and test their innovative idea. And I put a spotlight book in the chat as well that outlines each of the 10 projects in more detail. As Ashley mentioned, we're in the process of evolving the Indigenous Innovation Initiative infrastructure, moving from the current seed program we have to including a pre-seed program at the beginning to support really early on innovators to articulate and create a prototype for their innovation, while at the same time starting to develop a business or an organization to wrap around that innovative idea and bring it to life. We're also creating a transition to scale program for innovators who either from the pre-seed program, seed program, or elsewhere are ready to operationalize their innovation at a larger scale so they can expand maybe geographically or other ways to expand their impact more broadly. So it's a bit of insight about who we are, a few resources in the chat to help with that as well. In terms of our announcement, we have been working with the WEKH Indigenous team on something really exciting around design sprints. And so we're co-partnering on a project to kind of co-create and learn together how to create a distinctly Indigenous approach to design sprints to help us quickly and collaboratively solve problems within organizations, within communities, using innovation and creativity. So we're collating together, and we'll wrap up the project with a final report that outlines our learnings and outlines what that design sprint process looks like, and how it can support innovation and creativity across the diverse organizations within both the Indigenous innovation and entrepreneurship space. So within I3, we're hosting the first design sprint together in partnership, and we're using that design sprint to co-create an application and selection process that helps us to find and invest in the really innovative, really bold ideas within the community in a really good way, meaning that this application and selection process is rooted in Indigenous ways of knowing and being. It removes the gendered, systemic, and racialized barriers that Indigenous women, Two-Spirit, queer, trans, non-binary, and gender diverse innovators often face when trying to access capital, whether it's financial, social, or cultural capital, and creating a process that's really uplifting. So we're walking with love and compassion in a grant making process. And we all know applying for grants is really tricky. It can be really complicated, and it's not usually fun. So we're trying to find and evolve into an application and selection process that is rooted in love and compassion. And so innovators feel really good at each step of that process. And so we're next week starting to host our first design sprint, January 27th to February 2nd. We'll be doing this in partnership with the WEKH team, the I3 team, Grunt Challenges Canada, other core partners, but most importantly, innovators and applicants and community members in the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem who have the really good insights to help us co-create and evolve this process together. So WEKH, any questions? Happy to answer.
Awesome. Thanks, Marissa. Yes, and we did have a question from Lindsay. So yes, we will definitely be sharing our process and our findings and key themes. We're hoping to do between 10 and 14 design sprints with different organizations, and we'll be releasing a final report once they're all done. And I think, we don't even know at this point what we're going to create, but we're both really looking forward to it, and we're really excited about what's to come in the next 2 years. So Shannon, I know that you talked already about the Finance Cafe, but I just want to throw the floor back to you again in case there's anything that you didn't get to say, or if you just want to talk about something on the fly.
Well, thank you. I guess I'll just say to the Finance Cafe, well, we are very focused on business financial literacy. And so just sort of to put that spin on it, that it is all about looking at helping women entrepreneurs succeed in their companies, help them grow their companies, particularly the micro, small business. It's not for everyone. Like a lot of, we're not trying to say that women can't do financial literacy. For those entrepreneurs that feel really capable and confident and connected to their companies, then that's amazing. But for the women who want to learn a little bit more, want to feel more capable and confident in the decisions that they're making for their companies, ultimately it's about falling in love with your company and being able to love what you do. And we just can never really reach our full potential if we don't know what the story is of our business. And also not separating the person, you as an entrepreneur, from who you are just in life. So really helping you to connect your personal to your business goals. So that's another linkage that we put. I would love to encourage you to, we have a podcast that you can follow. We've got some incredible, diverse women entrepreneurs who are on our Finance Cafe podcast. And our podcast also, it's all about financial conversations. So we talk about, again, how every decision you make in your company is going to have a financial consequence. So we try and put those everyday decision-making conversations within wrapping it in around a financial outcome. And so we've had some incredible entrepreneurs on there. So if you're an entrepreneur that wants to check out our podcast and be a guest on our podcast, or there's topics that you want us to talk about, we're breaking through the taboo. No more of this. We don't want to talk about money that makes us feel uncomfortable, that we're not worthy about talking about money. We're changing the whole narrative around what it means to be financially confident and capable as a woman entrepreneur. So we do have our podcast. We do have a cornerstone financial literacy program, which is a 7-module program that is progressive. It starts with looking at the money mindset and trauma around money. And when I talk about it being progressive, it does go into some of the fundamentals, but then it starts helping you understand how that forms the story of your business. So I encourage you to check us out at thefinancecafe.ca. Love your feedback, love opportunities for collaboration. I think there's so many amazing groups that are doing such great stuff and coming together. So actually, thanks for bringing this group together, because this is the power. When the question was, what does it mean to decolonize? I think this is a lot of it. It's about being kind to each other and uplifting each other and using our own unique talents and knowledge, and being able to pay it forward with what we know, and we always learn from other people too. So anyway, I invite you to follow me on, I could put my social handles in there, but I'll just maybe put Ashley, if you've got some info on the Finance Cafe, maybe can you throw it in the chat for us? But yeah, I absolutely would love to hear from all of you. So thank you again for letting us share this time and space with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shannon, Vanessa, and Marissa. Marissa had to step out early, but I just want to open the floor to the audience. Do you have any questions for Vanessa or Shannon on anything that they shared today? You can post it in the chat. I'm also going to share a link to, oh, awesome. Yes, we love beaded earrings. Please share your Instagram if you have one. So yeah, we'll be making sure that everybody who registered is going to get a recording of this event. We'll download the chat and make sure that any important links or resources that were captured in the chat are included in our follow-up communications. So I really want to thank everybody who came today and registered, and everybody who came, all of our partners who came to support and also share some of the announcements that they have. I just want to thank everybody who has supported the work that we've been doing since the beginning. In 2020, we held extensive community consultations across the country with Indigenous women entrepreneurs, support organizations, absolutely anyone who was interested, to really get a sense of what is needed right now in order to be more inclusive for Indigenous women and diverse entrepreneurs. And, that's really fueled absolutely everything that we've announced today. The See It, Be It campaign, Circles of Matriarchy, financial literacy, creating more opportunities to provide financial literacy for Indigenous women, and of course, the Indigenous Innovation Design Sprints project, which will be working intimately one-on-one with different organizations across the country to help them build prototypes that will allow them to be more inclusive of Indigenous women entrepreneurs. So all of these ideas really were community driven through those consultations, and it's just been beautiful over the past 2 years to be able to bring some of these projects to life and to work with such an amazing group of partners that we have across the country and regionally. I don't think we had any questions unless I missed something in the chat. Kara, did you see anything?
Sorry, I was just typing in the chat. No, I don't think I saw any questions that I haven't answered already. If I did miss your question, I know that I've popped mine and Ashley's emails into the chat a few times, as well as our presenters. So feel free to reach out to us. I will also say, I was going to type this in the chat, Ashley, but now that I'm unmuted, I'll just go for it. WEKH Indigenous does have a monthly newsletter that we send out. So if you would like to stay up to date on what we're working on, we also share different things that our partners are working on or things happening in the ecosystem. I'll pop my email in the chat once more, but you can email me to be added to that list as well.
I'll just add quickly, I saw a few comments in the chat that we can't copy or save the chat. So will it be sent to everyone?
Yeah, I'm going to download it, and then we'll put a little follow-up communications piece together for everybody. Awesome. Well, it was a jam-packed agenda, and I'm really excited to give everybody 5 minutes back in their day. Miigwech for coming, and stay tuned for updates on all of these exciting projects this year.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Merci.
you.
Thank you.
Miigwech.
Miigwech, miigwech.